Last week, we launched our new program year in the life of the church with the theme, Come Learn to Be Human Again. It's been fun to hear some of the responses to the giant signs that we have out on Grandin Road, from a precocious child asking, well, if I'm not a human being, then what am I? To members of the Hughes architect firm and the Avis construction firm working on our sanctuary renovation, asking questions about it. I even had a conversation with the Reverend Taylor Mertens of Raleigh Court United Methodist Church down the road, saying he'd gotten text messages from members of his congregation saying, what's up with these signs at Raleigh Court Pres? And he said that he replied to them and said, well, don't go there to find out. It is our hope that these signs draw some curiosity. And while we're not trying to get people to leave a church where they're actively participating and come this way, it is our hope that somebody might see that and consider something that might be lacking in their own life. They might recognize something out of balance in their daily routine. Might reflect on these modern pressures that you heard Liz talk about in her Minute for Mission so eloquently, that drive us to more and prevent us from entering the deeper and fuller joys and experiences of life. And so someone might just weave their way into this fellowship hall today and sit down in a padded chair next to you, wondering if there is something here that might satisfy that longing. So as we enter this program year to welcome one another, to become human again, we're going to be looking at stories of hospitality through the life of Jesus, particularly places where he goes to eat around tables with other people. We're going to be in the Gospel of Luke for the next few weeks because Luke, among all of the people who write about the life of Jesus, he has the most stories about Jesus going and eating at people's tables. We're going to be looking over the next several weeks in worship. We're going to structure the sermon around a different part of a meal that we might share. So the greeting, the place settings, the menu, the meal being served, the dinner conversation, and the after-dinner rest. Why look at meals to discover what it means to be human? What does dining around a table have to do with becoming human again? Well, for Christians, our identity is very deeply shaped by a meal. A meal that Jesus first did with his disciples and that he gave all of his followers into the future to continue to enact. Jesus didn't just say, go out and be hospitable. He gave us a practice to shape us into a people of hospitality. So important is this meal that Jesus gave us that we've been out of the sanctuary for 6 months, reorienting our sanctuary because of it. Moving the communion table forward, out past the arch, so that it is the table central to our life. If you've forgotten what that looks like, or if you've never been in there, we'll be back in about 4 to 6 more Sundays, okay? As part of this project, then, we've worked with Peter's Woodcrafting to have a new communion table structured, one that doesn't look like an altar where you would sacrifice anything, but a table that looks like a dining table where the people of God might gather. In fact, that communion table is here. We wanted to premiere it as part of this Welcome Table series. You'll see it's made to look like a dining table. It's wide so that it could hold many people. We want this table to be a central symbol to our life together as the people of God. For when we come to this table, we become human again. We are fed with the life that really is life. And so today we start with Jesus at a table with Simon, who is a Pharisee. Now, Pharisees took the law of Moses very seriously. Jesus took the law of Moses very seriously. It's not surprising he would be having dinner in the home of a Pharisee. You can expect, therefore, that these educated and committed Pharisees would practice all the appropriate customs of welcome for their guests. And so the ancient practice of welcome that was throughout ancient Greece had been adopted by the Jewish people, that when a guest came to your house, a servant would bring them a bowl of water where they would wash their feet and all of the stuff that gets on your feet in an ancient desert climate where there are animals in the road and there's no indoor plumbing. Then you'd be brought another bowl in which you would wash your hands. And then your host would offer you a kiss of greeting. Simon the Pharisee would absolutely know this practice. He knows that how you welcome people communicates what you think about them. When Rebecca and I were engaged to be married, we were thrown a wedding shower. And this particular wedding shower, all the guests who came, in addition to their gift, had to write a note of advice related to the gift item that could help us in our married life together. One of the guests at that party was a woman named Becky Dwarshus, an older woman of fine taste and generous hospitality. She gave us a set of wine glasses, and with it, she gave us a note of advice. It had these instructions. I think they were a little more for Rebecca than for me. It said, when you're having people over, just before they arrive, put on your lipstick and pour yourself a glass of wine. That way, you're ready to welcome your guests with a smile on your face and a drink in your hand. Why? Well, when you open the door, this communicates that you are glad to see the person who has arrived. It shows that you are prepared to hear their stories and engage them in laughter and conversation. It shows a readiness to bring them into your life and into your home. If you greet someone and your hair's all frizzed out and sweat's pouring down your face and you have a dish rag in your hand, the person might not think you actually wanted, they wanted you to come. Right? They might think that you're putting them out. You're a burden on them by coming into their home this way. How we greet our guests communicates what we think about them. So what is Simon communicating when he does not welcome Jesus? Well, back a bit in the story. Jesus is accused by the Pharisee party, Simon's religious group, probably Jesus' religious group, that Jesus is accused of being a glutton and a drunkard and a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Jesus does not obey the regular rules of the dinner party and maintain the societal structures that he ought to maintain. He even hangs around with people who are in violation of the righteousness of his own religion. Simon slights Jesus, communicating that he considers Jesus to be an uncultured rural lout. He shows in this greeting where he believes Jesus belongs based on the way that Jesus carries out his daily activities. For Simon, to be human is to maintain the hierarchies that order a society based on education, wealth, class, religious observance, and practice. You pursue those, and you find your full humanity, and some people are therefore better humans than others. Then the woman of the city comes in. We don't know how she knows that Jesus is at Simon's house. Maybe she overheard the invitation. Maybe she saw through the open window or the doorway. Perhaps she witnessed how Jesus wasn't welcomed when he first entered, and this affronted her. This woman of the city, a sinner, comes into the house and begins to anoint Jesus' feet with oil, to wash his feet with her tears and dry them with her hair. We get an insight into the internal dialogue of Simon at the table. He says to himself, if Jesus only knew what kind of woman this was. So she's not a stranger. She's somebody Simon already knows, and she's not someone who deserves a spot at his table. Yet once Jesus tells this story, this parable of the debtors, he turns to Simon and he says, "Do you see this woman?" Well, of course Simon sees this woman. We've already heard. He knows exactly what kind of woman she is. Simon pays very careful attention to the guest list and knows who should be invited and how they should be greeted. Simon doesn't miss any details. But Jesus knows. Simon, do you see this woman? How you see this woman says everything about whether you are human in the way that God declares we are human, or whether you have settled for a less than human existence. Simon sees a woman of the city who is a sinner. Jesus sees a woman of abundant hospitality worthy of Becky Dwarshes. Simon can't follow common courtesy to greet Jesus. And Jesus doesn't throw a fit, mind you. He can take a slight. His full humanity is not based on being honored by his host. But this woman goes beyond common courtesy, using her tears to wash his feet, anointing not his head with oil, but his feet, not offering him the kiss of greeting, but kissing his feet. Jesus praises her. And as we enter into this story, we think, well, I sure don't want to be like Simon. Though time and time again, we fall into that trap. Maybe we think, I want to be like Jesus. Somebody who's able to see the full humanity of others and name them as beloved. But I don't think that's the lesson for us if we're looking at how to carry out a greeting at the welcome table. I think the model of greeting, the one who shows full humanity and forms the welcome table, is this woman of the city, a sinner. Don't be like Jesus in this story. Be like this woman. This woman has had her entire life reoriented because of meeting Jesus. She has found her life made whole in him. She has been freed and forgiven, and now she wants to honor the Christ who has so honored her. And so at the welcome table, we fall all over ourselves in greeting, not just with polite hellos, how are you, have a blessed day. We break convention. We see through the lens of love. We greet as those who have been greeted by the very grace of God, and we do it with whatever we've got, whether it's tears and hair and oil, or casseroles and cards, hugs and handshakes, syncing up Google calendars, remembering a name, offering a prayer, building a relationship. How we greet sets the stage for the table. How we greet others sets the trajectory for whether we are living a human life. And to be human is to welcome in a spirit of abundance and joy. Think over the last week of your life, the spaces where you've been, where you've greeted people day to day. Good morning, welcome to Starbucks. What can I get started for you? You're here in the drive-through line. You go to the doctor and the secretary takes a wooden spoon and pulls the little plastic or glass door open about halfway. Please sign in on the form. We need you to update your insurance information. A neighbor's bringing in their groceries. You offer a nod. Or somebody's walking their dog and you do a wave, but you do that wave and you don't even go to the trouble to move your hand. You just go. That's all you can muster. For Christians, those moments of greeting are moments when we are fading from our full humanity. To be like this woman before Jesus is to pour ourselves out in joy and welcome, not in a transaction, not because of work expectation, not because of the rules that govern polite society. It's to find the space to be genuinely enthusiastic, to celebrate the fullness that God gives, and to share that fullness freely. Might we be a people who pursue others with that same kind of abundance and welcome? It's the beginning to becoming human again. Amen.